In this era where we're living in the sort of period of the Crown, where fact and fiction are blurred into one, this is all the more important, what you've written here. And lots of the reviews that I've been reading have said that you've managed to, over, quarter of a century, build up the trust of the royal household. How is it that you have managed to get access to things like Operation London Bridge, that was the death of very senior royals, and indeed some of the rehearsals for the coronation? And what did you learn from them?
Well, I was very lucky to be there. Over the years I've written various books and documentaries, so I suppose you was just try to be fair. That's all you can do, is be fair, so that people think that
not sycophantic.
Not sycophantic, but straight.
Key.
You tell it straight, and no sort of side, no spin. And you don't need to. I mean, it's such an extraordinary story. But you say, watching the rehearsals for the coronation was as fascinating as watching the coronation itself.
Farcical, I heard.
Bits of it were sort of farcical. I mean, one rehearsal, they had a stand-in for the Queen, and the crown was too big. They put the crown on her head, it went straight down to her shoulders, and everyone fell about laughing. Yeah. But it had that atmosphere of sort of family wedding in the offing. But I mean, there've been some very, very touching moments. And like I say, I mean, that period immediately after the death of the Queen, you had a period of great uncertainty. And don't forget, we had 2 prime ministers and 2 monarchs in a week, in 3 days, in fact.
Yes.
And that, for some countries, I mean, you change your head of state and your head of government in a week. I mean, that's time for riots and demos and coups. Yeah. We didn't have a shopping fire. We didn't have an angry word. It just happened because the monarchy brings this sort of sense of stability. But you still, you've got to get it right. And I thought that what was fascinating, that first speech she did on the day after the Queen died, when 52, when Elizabeth II came to the throne. We didn't hear her speak for 10 months until her Christmas broadcast. He was on the airwaves the next day. And that speech, I think, it sort of nailed it. It just said what needed to be said. And it was fascinating. The opinion polls afterwards gave him a 94% approval rating. Which,
but it was the longest apprenticeship in history.
It was.
Yeah,
I mean,
he had plenty of time to prepare for such things.
He had, but he hadn't been... well, it's the Crown. You mentioned the Crown. That's a very good point, because if you watch the Crown, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but if you do, there's this sort of plot line that he's itching to get his hands on, and he keeps sort of, lobbying prime ministers to say, come on, let me have a go. Not the case at all. He was never, ever pushing his way in, which is why the Queen's authority was completely undiminished to the end.